Hello, thanks for joining us for another edition of the Irish Angle on Jump To It. As usual, I've Nagle and Johnny Ward here with me. Welcome, guys, to the show.
Thanks,
Hi,
Vincent.
Vinny.
Now, it was a relatively quiet week in Ireland last week. Lots of race meetings, but nothing of major class until we got to the weekend with Leopardstown, I suppose, with classic trials, but I'm still not quite into that flat stuff yet. I'm still in the national hunt mode. What do you think, Johnny? The big one for me was the crowd that turned up in Limerick. I know you were there for Student Day. Huge crowd on Thursday.
Yeah, like 10,000 people, Vinny. It was, how many people would have been at that meeting if it weren't a student? It was a sort of a mundane jumps card sort of towards the end of the season. And, I arrived, I suppose, with some trepidation. I've been at these student race days before, and my first student race day was 20 years ago this year when Back in Front won at Limerick, actually, before he went on to win the Supreme. And they were very low-key affairs. Like, I don't remember it being particularly busy or whatever. And obviously they've grown into this mammoth now that Limerick have created. And we have Leopardstown and Cork and Dundalk and other racecourses trying to do some sort of version of it. And I have to give some kudos to Limerick. We were all young in the past, and like if you have a day out like that, and you have so many women there, like if you were a lad and you were a student at the races on Thursday, it was like some experience. It was essentially like I'd say about 80% girls maybe, and it was a great spectacle. And I think like a lot of the connections of the winners really enjoyed the fact that there were so many people there to see the winners. And I had one of my favorite moments was for the first race. There were three students who were intently studying the horses going around the parade ring, and I went over to them, and they were all like, "We're actually here to study the form." And as much as they were dressed to the nines, they actually did enjoy the race. And I would just hope that, say, like even if 5% of the people who were there could fall in love with racing, that's 500 people. Like so I thought it was a great day.
Yeah, what do you make of it, Emma? We have another one coming up this week in Leopardstown, so they're coming thick and fast.
Yeah,
for
I
the
was
students.
I was actually at the Leopardstown one a few years ago as a student, and it's a brilliant day out. Like, in fairness, like it's kind of something all the students look forward to for kind of a few weeks before it. But yeah, no, Limerick was brilliant. Like I wasn't there myself now, but like I was watching it on the telly, and like the roar that the horses got even for the first race, like it was like something you'd see in Cheltenham for the Supreme Novice Hurdle or something. It was just brilliant. And I think Limerick, actually, the race course put out a good video of kind of a recap of the day, just showing all the students and everything. And it was great because you saw obviously there was DJ and they were socializing and all that, but like they were really enjoying the races as well, which was brilliant to see. They were giving them all a good cheer home. And I agree with Johnny, like for kind of a midweek meeting there, if you were owning or training a horse, like you get a great kick out of them getting cheered home like that, and a small race. So yeah, no, it was brilliant. And like 10,000 students there, even if a small fraction of them came back to do it again, it would be brilliant. So yeah, no, big fan of the student race days. The more the better for me, I'd say.
And is there much else with these days? Like when you go there, is it just a standard day where you get 10,000 people obviously all dressed up? But is there anything else there to try and focus them to come back again? Is there any incentive for them to come back? It'd be nice to think that you give them free tickets to another day or something like that. Was there anything like that, Johnny, down there in Limerick that you were aware of?
I don't think so, and I think that's a good question as well, because like ultimately it's a piss up. Like I'd say 99% of the students were drinking at a guess, and basically it's a big day out. Like they're enjoying. I suppose they're coming to the end of their semester as well. A lot of them probably first years, and it is a big day out. But you do like. Maybe going forward, like you could have people who would liaise to students and educate them about the horses as well as they go around the parade ring. Maybe that's something as well they could look at, where the PA like really interacts with the students throughout the day, because when I went to Limerick in 2003, I had very little interest in horse, and I was just getting into it, and I did fall in love with racing, just by the fact that it was something new to me. And if they could maybe educate the kids in the sense of what it's all about, like what handicaps are, what maidens are, jockeys, what they claim, trainers, what part of the world they're from, maybe that could help as well, because like it is, and in fairness to Limerick, they probably have so much going on and keeping the whole thing, in check. But yeah, like I think going forward, maybe as you say, extra tickets as well could be a good idea.
Yeah, just from an industry point of view, like if we've got 10,000 new people coming to a race meeting, surely we should be grabbing them with both hands and not letting them back out. It just seems like there's loads of things we could do. You'd think even just to have a group of so-called experts that would be able to go and take some of those groups of people, explain to them what the race card is, how it works, what we're dealing with here, and what sort of horses they should back, shouldn't back, because I'm sure they just back everything or anything and have no idea. Whereas a little bit of knowledge can go a long way in this sort of thing, and might be the thing that would bring them back. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point. To be fair, it's not really something I've thought of, but yeah, no, like 100%. When like my kind of experience there was exactly as you described. The majority of people who wouldn't have been into horse racing, they were there kind of just for the day out, and they'd put like maybe a fiver on a horse, but they wouldn't have a clue. It's just kind of maybe picking a name or a colour. But if there was someone there, just even on the intercom, if they were giving a kind of announcements and making them more informed, it would definitely be, it's definitely something they probably, maybe they are thinking about it, but yeah, that would be a plus, and offering free tickets maybe for them to return or whatever like that. Yeah, I suppose just retaining them is probably the thing. It's easy to get them in for the student days, I suppose, when it's it's a great day out socially and all that. But yeah, 100%. That's actually a great point.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, we'll move on. Grand National protests. There seems to be an issue over the UK Grand National that there's some of these antis talking about having a protest on the track. I don't think it's going to happen now by the sound of it, because it's been copped onto. What do you make of this, Emma?
Yeah, it's a bit mad, really. I actually listened to the Daily Mail had released a video of their investigation or whatever. It's a bit mad. The Daily Mail is kind of derailing this thing, and not the police or whatever. But yeah, the group that's organising, I think they were involved. Was there a bit of a similar situation in Epsom before the Derby last year? There wasn't much about it. I think there was a couple of them ran onto the track, but it was pretty quickly de-escalated or whatever. But this, by all means, sounded like a much more high-end, highly planned operation. I think they were going to go to the races and make their way into the track and glue themselves together or something like that. But yeah, the thing with these groups, I don't get their end goal. If they're going to ban racing, where do they think these horses are going to go? They're not going to be alive in the first place. I know I'd rather be working than not be alive personally, and I'm sure the horses would rather be racing than have absolutely nothing to do. I just think their whole ideology is just a bit mad, really, to be honest. And if anyone has 10 minutes spare, I would listen to the clip that the Daily Mail released about their plans, because it would make you laugh. To be fair, that people are going out and spending a lot of time in organising something as mad as this. But look, I wouldn't be too worried about it. No, obviously Aintree know about it. You can't have too much of a problem with people having, everyone obviously isn't going to like racing and this and that, but I think that the ideologies that this crowd have are just a bit too far for me. They kind of it's kind of the extreme kind of veganism where their point is the only one that can be right, and I find that very hard to kind of take seriously, to be honest.
Yeah. What do you think, Johnny? Is it something that we could see an issue with at an Irish Grand National or another meeting? It's very hard to legislate for these, isn't there, and to predict where they might pop up at some point in the future. But there's been issues with this in the past, obviously, with the Grand National. We even had bomb threats at one stage, didn't we? And we've also got Australia's had some issues with this as well. We know hunting does, we know coursing does. There's been all sorts of issues around different sports. Is it something that we're going to have to deal with on a regular basis in the future, do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, I think I had to look into this because I initially understood that it was kind of a climate change group, which is Extinction Rebellion, and I'd have massive respect for climate activists in the sense of I know it's hard to know what to do in the sense of protest, and there was I suppose an infamous clip in the Tour de France where it was on one of the mountainous stages, and the stage was held up by climate activists. And if you're a cyclist in the particular climb that they were doing, to be stopped in the middle of it is absolute torture in the sense of a sporting context. But then the more I read into it, I think it's an offshoot of Extinction Rebellion, and it's an animal rights group. And like, animal rights groups in racing are like, they're literally, they couldn't be in a worse position to actually fight their cause, because horses are essentially the best looked after animals in the world. Like, and people who look after horses and train horses day to day, the horses are essentially so well looked after. They're treated like humans. And if we were to go down the route of animal rights, you should look into what essentially the food chain, not the horse racing industry, because I honestly think this is one of the most ridiculous things ever. Horses have a great life. They really enjoy being in training. They're well fed, they're well looked after. They've lots of camaraderie among themselves in terms of the horses in the yard, and they're really, really loved by the people looking after them. And I think this is absolute bullshit if you were to put Grand National in the basis of how horses are looked after, because this is completely the wrong way to go about it. Like, if you want to protest that how chickens are reared or pigs are reared for the food chain and anything like that, absolutely. But this is completely going down the wrong route in my view.
Yeah, but I suppose it's all a publicity thing, isn't it? It's because the cameras are there and it's high profile. It's like a suffragette at the Derby or whatever it was many, many moons ago. It's to highlight your cause, whatever that may be. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're people who are specifically against horse racing, though that may be the case in this instance. But just generally, I suppose, if someone wants to cause a bit of a storm, as they've done with that Extinction Rebellion and everything else, that you've got things like throwing tomato sauce or whatever over valuable paintings and all that different stuff that goes on, you could see why disrupting the Grand National would be a big thing for one of those little organizations to raise their profile and all the rest of it. But it's just there's not a lot you can do, is there, in the sense that it could be anyone in the crowd, could be someone who decides, like at a football match in the old days when you used to get a streaker coming out, you couldn't predict who it was in the crowd. It was just whoever had 2 drinks more than someone beside them just decided to go out and have a go and run across the pitch. So it's a very difficult thing to legislate for. That's what I'm trying to look at. What do you think, Emma? There's not a lot we can do, is there, in general terms?
I suppose in general terms, no. I mean, like, I can't see it being an issue in Aintree now, because obviously security will be kind of ready. The whole kind of plan was put out, I suppose. But at a normal race meeting, like, if it happens, there's not a whole lot you can do. And I think you see it you see a lot of clips on social media, protests in the UK of people sitting on the roads, and there's actually very little you can do to move people if they're I suppose it is a peaceful protest in a way, and you kind of have to just get on with it. But yeah, it's very little you can do, I suppose. If you listen to the clip, like, it does, what you're saying is right. It is kind of a publicity thing, I suppose, more so than anything, because I think their original plan had been to dig up the track the night before, but they said that wouldn't be maybe high profile enough, because they wouldn't be seen to be doing this on the television or whatever. So they decided to glue themselves together on the track instead. But yeah, like, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Just try and prevent it, I suppose. But you'd hope that it wouldn't cause too much trouble going forward. But like, as we see with the protests on the roads in England, they're protesting against the carbon emissions, I presume. But there's very little you can do once it happens. You just kind of have to live with it, I suppose.
In fairness, Vinny, like, if you're protesting on the climate front, and if you look at the global response to the COVID pandemic compared to the climate issue, which is literally our extinction probably in the next 200 years, the way it's going, I have total respect for people doing anything at all to raise awareness, because we're so slow to actually move with how big this crisis is. And in fairness, I would be on the line of, I'd respect people who are actually are conscious of that, and they're trying to get people to move faster. The Grand National is obviously a kind of an obvious card to play in that respect. So I mean, it's a difficult one for the organisers as well.
Fair enough. All right, look, we'll move on to racing, to actual horse racing that took place in the last week. Lots of stuff, loads of meetings anyway. But the Guineas Trials, the Ballysack Stakes, we had a big upset there. White Birch for John Murphy. What did you make of that one, Emma? Looked a fair horse, but the race kind of fell apart a little bit, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. Like, they went looked like they went fast in front, but like, you'd have to be disappointed with Aidan's horses, Alexandropoulos and Denmark, as well. I thought he might win a nicer race than he did. Alexandropoulos, I think he was very highly touted coming into it. He was kind of one that Aidan was mentioning as maybe one to follow for for the classics, the Derby in particular, I think he was saying. But yeah, I mean, he disappointed definitely. But like, you can't take too much away from the winner either. Like White Birch, he doesn't have any classic entries at the moment, but it wouldn't be a massive surprise to see him getting supplemented because, like, in fairness to him, he did it well. I think John Murphy's son, George was interviewed afterwards, and he said that they always thought he was a nice horse. He was interesting. I think Pizdbadil won it last year. Another Ulysses. They look like very tough stock anyway. If nothing else, like how highly he'd figure in a Derby picture is kind of hard to know. Maybe an Irish Derby or something you could see him getting involved in. I think he was saying Shane Foley was quite complimentary of him after the race. Shane ride Success Days, doing it a few years ago. He went on to, he disappointed in the Derby in Epsom, but he was third in a Gold Cup. So yeah, look, you'd like to see him go forward from it and compete in the classics, and hopefully he does. It's nice to see kind of the lower profile, smaller yards get kind of the big wins like this.
Yeah, Shane Foley was certainly very complimentary of the horse afterwards. He was saying it wasn't necessarily a surprise. I've ridden him in his work over the last couple of weeks and I've really liked him. He's a gorgeous horse. He went on to say he's a lovely horse. He's a very nice horse. He's a very good horse. So he was certainly very complimentary, and a jockey who'd already ridden a winner on the day. He's one of the top jockeys in the country. He should know a good one when he sits on one. What do you make of it, Johnny? Could it be a horse for a classic? They have to supplement it, not enter in any classics, so it'll cost a few quid to try and get it into anything.
Yeah, Ebba mentioned Success Days there. He was, I think he was by Jeremy, and he was quite similar in that he did handle this sort of ground very well. And it was a big win for Ulysses. Ulysses is extremely well bred. He's out of an Oaks Wolf, and I suppose generally you'd have to say Sons of Galileo at stud have probably been a shade disappointing. Frankel maybe obviously had a big winner yesterday. Frankel will be the best of them, but Ulysses is standing for 10 grand in England, and this horse came in. I actually tipped the horse in the race, just on the basis that, I mean, I thought there was complete hype about Alexandropoulos for all that he'd been good first time out. The two Aiden's two horse were by Camelot, who's already kind of exposed as a stallion himself, and I thought the hype was a bit maybe unjustified. Particularly the race meeting barely went ahead yesterday. Like, it was really testing ground, and John Murphy had pulled out actually a couple of horses earlier in the card, two nice horses that had run at Dundalk, probably on the basis that they weren't going to handle it. So I just thought he was fairly confident that the horse would handle the ground, but he travelled really well. Like, he gave himself a bit to do with the way he broke. And Shane Foley, like, I think he admitted afterwards, he sort of rode him to pick up the pieces and see how well he'd finish. But I really liked the last 100 yards. It looked like he was kind of headed, and then he rallied again. And I think like, this horse could be a proper horse for a Ledger or something like that, because that was a 1.2 miles yesterday. It was a strongly run race on bad ground, and he was really good at the finish. So he's definitely going to get a 1.5 miles. I would supplement him for the Derby. He's obviously a very valuable horse now as well, if they want to go down the route of selling him. But I suppose you got to remember, this horse won at Dundalk very easily, so he is ground versatile, complete contrast in ground. And I think in terms of what trip he wants, he's fascinating, because if he does get stay-in trips, and I think he will, he could really be top class.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Yeah, for a small yard. You're big on the breeding, Johnny. There was one ran in the first race at Leopardstown. Tender Kiss by Galileo out of Marcia. That's some breeding, isn't it? What did Coolmore pay? 6 odd million for Marcia, was it, at the sales?
Yeah, and I find it interesting now in the way that, like, Galileo's influence is like Aiden would have had two big winners on Sunday. One was by Dubawi, one was by Frankel, and in a way I think it makes it a bit more interesting, because, like, Aiden's success has been almost mirrored by the success of Galileo. They've basically gone hand in hand, and Aiden has had all these really good Galileos, I suppose, since Galileo won the Derby himself, and he's been able to rely on them year after year after year. And now you see that, they experimented with Warfront, which was basically a disaster. They're now looking for, they've Wootton Bassett as well, that they're going to get a lot of nice horses from, but they're obviously trying to find a stallion for the Galileo bred mares initially, and now they're going to try to find Galileo's replacement, and it's not easy at all.
Yeah, it's very true. It's a difficult task for them. We always thought it would be, but having said that, Aidan still won both Guineas trials, so he's not exactly a back number yet. He'll be all over these classics in a few weeks, won't he?
Yeah, like it's it's going to be compelling. Like the horse I'm going to tip for, you know, a horse to take out the week was another Dubawi who won from Matt Dundalk. And obviously his big signature horse this year is by Deep Impact Augusta Rodin. So I think he'll be happy enough with the day, because I don't know, the ground was so bad as well in the Ballysacks, and it's not necessarily the Derby trial that it was. I don't think he'll be losing sleep over that.
No, I'd agree. Right, well, let's look at the week and what do we pick out of it, ones to watch going forward. Emma, what did you like?
I thought there was a very good bumper ran in Nice on, was it Thursday? Was it a graded bumper? I think it was. There was two kind of well-touted point-to-point horses winning, Mirzor West and Mahon's Way. Mirzor West was one. I was actually in Drummahan when he fell at the last for his point-to-point. And, you know, he looked like he was going to be a good winner that day. And he's been transferred to Willie since in the JP McManus colours. And, yeah, he was really, really impressive winning the bumper. He did it very easily, like in what looked like a quality field. Derek O'Connor rode him, which was interesting. Derek did ride him in the point-to-point that day as well. But, you know, Derek and Willie isn't kind of the normal combination you'd see. But I think he's a full ball for Fernie Hollow. But what I'd note about him is he looked really, really relaxed the day of his point-to-point anyway, at least, compared to maybe Fernie Hollow, who was always a bit of a hothead by Westerner, I suppose. And I think David Casey mentioned that in his report afterwards as well, that he's a lot more tractable than Fernie Hollow was in his early days. So, you know, if he has any bit of the ability he had, and, you know, has the attitude to go with it, he could be kind of maybe a star in waiting. Another one for Willie coming through maybe. Great
stuff, yeah, very interesting. He might turn up as well in Punchestown, would he? That would be a possibility, would it, for champion bumper or something there?
Yeah, maybe. I don't think they mentioned anything afterwards, but it wouldn't be a shock at all, I'd say.
Good stuff, yeah. Johnny, what did you like from the week?
It would be very hard not to like him, and it was a race notable for another walk in the park horse, quite well touted. Henry de Bromhead's horse, Mahon's Way, who I thought was a shade disappointing. And meanwhile, over in Limerick, we had a walk in the park horse who was well touted for Gavin Cromwell that didn't look straightforward under pressure and was beaten second as well by a horse trained at Willie's. Willie winning both bumpers, and I think Mirzor West could be extremely good going forward. He was obviously quite expensive, being a brother to Fernie Hollow, but just the way he travelled, totally echo what Emma says. The horse I'm going to give actually was a winner at Dundalk on Friday, San Antonio. This was a race in which I couldn't get over the betting, Vinny. Just an hour was sent off 5-4 favourite, horse by Justify, who'd run well for some out, but I mean, there was nothing to say he should have been a 5-4 shot in a race in which Aidan had two like fairly likely race horses. Cape Bridgewater, I backed him the time before that when he was second to his stablemate, I think Londoner, and he kind of produced a similar enough performance. San Antonio absolutely bolted up. Wayne Lord was riding him, Shamie Heffernan was on the other horse. It was kind of hard to know what to make of the pecking order, but I really like the way he travelled. He's a lovely pedigree as well. He's out of Rain Goddess by Dubawi, and I think he's in the Derby picture after this. I think he definitely deserves to be put in that bracket because he's lightly raced. It was his first try over the trip, and he won very, very easily against two probably good horses in second and third.
Interesting. With all the racing we had last week, you pick one in Dundalk. I'm going to pick one in Dundalk as well. The one that won the opening 2-year-old maiden, a horse called Bayan, trained by Willie Brown and ridden by Manuel Marques Santos. I think he rode 1,000 winners in Brazil, or so I'm told. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. A lot of these guys, they come over, you don't even know their age as well. They seems to be a lot of mystery about these guys who come from the likes of that South American countries, the racing end of it. But having said this is by Bungle in the Jungle. It missed the break. There was a few quid for it in the morning. Missed the break, sitting out last, and in the straight in Dundalk came up the inside, which I think is normally not a good place to come, but he came up the inside, went that route, and as you can see in the picture there, has a bit of a minstrel look about it, and the colouring and the white socks and everything, big white blaze, very flashy looking individual, and it stormed home, absolutely hacked up. Could be anything. They're talking about going to Royal Ascot, maybe so. It's owned by Manuel's wife, owns it, so you wouldn't know if it'll be sold, but I thought it was pretty impressive. Mightn't be a great race, but at the same time, to win the way it did was very, very impressive. So there you go. That's one from me. Next week, we're not going to have a show on the Monday. It's bank holiday. It's going to be Irish Grand National Day. Instead, we're going to hopefully do a show on Thursday, which we'll preview the English Grand National and see what we make of that. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get all the information about the upcoming videos, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.